It's special time of the year, Parker. We're through Thanksgiving, and that means a very special time of the year is upon us. No, it is not Christmas. It is the winter meetings, which essentially, for you and I, is its own mini Christmas. I get so excited for the winter meetings coming up here in a few days in Orlando, Florida. Parker, how you feeling about it this year?
I love it. I love it. The winter meetings are awesome. They occupy a very special place in my heart. You and I like covered the winter meetings last year, and I like we'll get into like how we consume them and stuff like that. But this is baseball's version of like the free agency period in other sports. And when the NFL opens up free agency and everybody signs in 2 days, and then NBA does kind of the same thing, like this is kind of baseball's version of that because free agency is so wide open for baseball. You get a bunch of these guys in a room. They literally make pitches like corporate entities to each other, to players, to agents, to stuff like that. And you get a lot of stuff. Like last year we had Juan Soto signing at the winter meetings, and that was like one of the cooler moments of the offseason. So I'm super excited.
So, how do you consume it? Because for me, Parker, I am the guy where I will have MLB Network on from 7 in the morning to 7 p.m. on my iPad, following me around the house, wherever I'm going. Tell me that's the same for you. I suspect it may be.
100%. I have MLB literally on my iPad. It is propped up next to me wherever I am, whatever I'm doing. I'm listening to Greg Amsinger fill airtime, and then I'm listening to them talk about. I love like all the drop-ins you get during MLB winter meetings. Is like it's just like John Morosi throwing stuff at the wall and seeing what sticks, and I love that. Like I did some of my favorite baseball reporting, and then all of a sudden it's like, we got breaking news. We interrupt this to let you know that Juan Soto signed for $1 billion, and like I cannot wait for that. I think that I think this is going to be like a bloodbath of a winter meetings. I think that a lot of these starting pitchers are going to come off the board during the winter meetings, specifically the starting pitchers, and also a bunch of the veteran guys like an Alex Bregman, guys like a Kyle Schwarber, especially guys who had long off seasons in the past that they had to wait a long time. I think they're going to sign very quickly, and I think that happens this weekend.
Well, all signs based on what we're hearing from the guys like John Morosi and the guys like Jeff Passan, they're saying that this may be quite a frenzy of the winter meetings because talks have progressed with so many players that are at the top of that free agent list. I think from what I'm hearing, Kyle Tucker may take a little longer. However, like you said, Kyle Schwarber could get done before or during the meetings. Tatsuya Imai and other Japanese players, like guys, remember, they have windows that go into the end of
They're
December.
posted.
Yes, till early January. So those may be wrapped up. I mean, to see it happen in real time is very exciting. But I think about guys like Greg Amsinger on MLB Network and some of the guests they have. Harold Reynolds on all the time, and Lauren Shehadi is one of my favorite people. I think she's fantastic. But those, like, I feel like when I'm watching that, like I'm actually there at the resort with them. It's very weird. It's such a dorky thing. But I love it because I feel like I am there at the table, and they do a great job of talking to some awesome folks, and the insight is just through the roof.
Yeah, I love especially as somebody who watches them from sunup to sundown. I love seeing that like when they do get a GM to pop on, they look like they went 15 rounds with Floyd Mayweather, and they always look super disheveled, and they have gotten an hour of sleep every night for the last 3 nights, and like I love that this is such a big moment for baseball, and it's truly evolved in the last few years. Like it's really gotten to be what it is because I think that teams and players especially are kind of done waiting for these long off seasons. I think about Bryce Harper and taking as long as he did to sign his free agent contract. He was the cover athlete for MLB The Show that year, and initially before the game came out, the cover had him in like a sweatsuit, a track jacket, because he didn't have a team. And I think that teams want to get away from that. I think that MLB doesn't like that it happens because when you think about what's going on later in the offseason, like the NBA is starting to get towards the playoffs and hockey starting to get towards the playoffs, and they don't want to have to compete with the Super Bowl in order to air a free agent signing. Nobody's thinking about baseball in February and January. So
yes.
This is when baseball would like its offseason to happen, is in December, because as we move into January, the NFL becomes king in America, and when you're competing for an American sports audience, that this is the time where it all needs to happen. And I think baseball is really leaning into that.
Okay, so here's my question for you then, Parker, is and this is almost kind of a broader CBA conversation too, and could be part of those conversations. So what does that look like going forward? Like, what do you think about MLB going forward and having a signing period like the NFL, like the NBA, and kind of condensing it all? Is the economics of baseball really even conducive to something like that right now?
I could see it happening, and I'm flip-flopping on this as I'm literally speaking to you right now. I could see it happening where baseball adopts a signing period, but I have a feeling. So the way this plays out in my head is the owners come to the table for the CBA negotiation saying they want a salary cap, and the players hard stop. Hell no, we're not doing that. The players also do not want a signing period, because what does that do is it drives down the bidding war. There's less time for bids to take place when it comes to free agent signings. But I could see that being the concession that the players union gives to the owners in exchange for never bring up this salary cap negotiation again. I have a feeling that these business people, these billionaires that are very good at business and negotiation, are using the salary cap as the battering ram so that they can get in the door with the signing period, because it is conducive for the owners. It ends up probably meaning that they're going to spend a little less money in the long run. So I actually am not optimistic, but I actually leaning towards, I think that we could see ourselves with a signing period that ends somewhere around Christmas, because MLB doesn't want these big free agent signings happening during the NFL playoffs. That really just doesn't help with the publicity. And I think that the MLB would like it for all to happen in December.
Well, we'll see. We're going to have so many large conversations on the CBA. Don't worry, friends. There is time for that, and that time is not now, because I'm not going down that depressing rabbit hole. However, Parker, this winter meetings, I mean, what do you want to see? What do you got? Hit me with some bold predictions, things that you really just want to see after this coming week.
Well, I kind of hinted at it earlier. I think that Schwarber comes off the board. I think Bregman decides where he wants to go. Guys who are, they don't want long off seasons. They've been there, done that. They are kind of figuring out where they're going to end their careers at this point. And I think that both those guys are going to come off the board. I also think that we're going to see some starting pitching movement. I do think that we see a lot of... First of all, Dylan Cease is already off the board, and the second Framber Valdez is signed and a Ranger Suarez is signed, we are going to see a cascade of starting pitcher signings, because as soon as the big targets are off the board, the guys who you're kind of splitting hairs when you're trying to figure out which one you would rather have, those kind of guys come off the board a lot faster once the first domino falls. So I think Framber Valdez signs by the end of the weekend, and I don't think that the rest of the starting pitcher market is going to completely flush itself out over that weekend, but I think that in the week following the winter meetings, we are going to see I'll like 5 to 10, maybe not premier, but pretty substantial pitching signings after that.
That tracks. I really could see that. I am so intrigued by where Kyle Schwarber is going, and mind you, bold predictions aren't things that my baseball brain thinks is going to happen. They're just bold because I think they'd be funny as shit to happen, which is why I want to see Kyle Schwarber give a big hug to his old friends in Chicago and make peace with the fact that he was non-tendered and go back to the Cubs. I would just love to see that.
Yeah, that'd be super cool. Like you said earlier, I do not think that a Kyle Tucker is one of those guys that's going to sign this offseason. That is the premier chip being moved this offseason. I think that bidding war is going to go on until almost spring training or even into spring training, because this is the perfect offseason for Kyle Tucker. I don't think that we're going to see him take a pillow contract. I think Kyle Tucker is out there to go get his big deal. I think he's going to sign that this offseason. This is the perfect free agency class for Kyle Tucker to be the big piece, and I don't think he wants to roll those dice. But I also think that we see a guy like a Cody Bellinger sign during the winter meetings. There's plenty of guys out there. I can just sit here and list names, but I could see those guys who have been through long off seasons before really do not like to do them more than once. I mean, we saw that with Blake Snell last season. So I'm looking at guys who have been free agents one, if not multiple times in the past, like Cody Bellinger, like Alex Bregman, like, Schwarber. I think those guys are going to come off the board.
Well, I'll tell you what, Parker, the one thing I'm looking at really closely that I'm super excited for is, don't forget, we have the draft lottery at the end of the winter meetings. And My White Sox have the highest percentage chance because they played so well to get the first pick in the MLB draft, and that's 27.73%.
This is the first time you've been able to refer to it as playing well.
Yes. So I am so excited for this because you know what, Parker? At the end of the day, in this sport now more than ever, you could draft a guy at the first pick and see him in the majors in a year or two. And if they draft this and do this first pick right, you're looking at your next star in Chicago. So I'm excited to see how that falls.
Yeah. Pete Alonso, will he sign by the end of the winter meetings? Another guy who had a really painful offseason last year.
I think so. And why? Because I think he is the type of guy where he's working through kind of the lay of the land and his market and exploring that. And I think he's one of those guys that you're just going to see him probably end up having those final meetings at the winter meetings to wrap that up. I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah, I would agree. And then also with Josh Naylor signing that 5-year deal with Seattle, I think that he is just the only truly premier first baseman bat out there. You've got a couple guys like Nathaniel Lowe and Ryan O'Hearn out there, but I just don't think they're on the same level as Pete Alonso. And I think he wants to sign relatively quickly. So, yeah, I agree. I think he's signed.
One thing I'll point out there is just for those who are following the winter meetings and are kind of maybe even new to how the offseason works is when you're looking at markets for guys and MLB teams, Pete Alonso is one of those guys I think where like the market's pretty defined. He is such a unique skill set at the position, with the bat, with the kind of a lackluster defense where like you know what your market is. So it may not change very much of it all between now and the middle of January. So that's why I think you look at a guy like Pete Alonso and other guys that fit that mold where you know what you're walking into. Why don't you just wrap it up at the winter meetings?
I could see that. I also remember a time where Xander Bogaerts was reported to already be writing his name on the dotted line for the Red Sox and then instantly was signing a 12-year deal with the San Diego Padres. And that happened at the winter meeting, and the Padres came out of nowhere to do that. So who knows?
I mean, how much of that is the player? How much of that is, John Arson Judge, Heyman? I don't know.
Maybe. It could be. I don't know. We'll see. But I love the winter meetings, and I'm really excited to be here with you.
Heck yeah, man. I love it too. If you love baseball, and I suspect that you do because you're listening to us, make sure you follow us every single week here at Late Night Baseball. It is 9:50 p.m. Central Time, and we're here talking baseball because Parker and I have lives. We have kids. We have jobs. At the end of the day, we still love talking baseball, and we want you to join us in all the fun baseball talk this offseason. So make sure you're joining us here on YouTube, on TikTok, on Instagram, wherever you get your socials here for Late Night Baseball.